Hi, welcome to Pemberley Farm. Today we are going to talk about the first in a series of probably about 4 videos about open fire cooking. Now there's a lot of different ways you can cook on the open fire, but this series is going to be specific to cast iron cooking, whether it's Dutch ovens or skillets or whatever. So this will be an open fire cooking series about open fire cooking in cast iron. So since we're talking about fire, maybe the very first thing we ought to talk about is the fire. And when you talk about fire at all, the very first thing you want to remember is always to be safe. And I know you think, oh, I've done camping and I've done this and that, but always be safe, because you know, sometimes fire tends to get away from you. If you're not careful about what type of clothing you have on, you can get your clothing in the fire, and that just ruins a good day. And so safety first is always the first thing you want to remember when you're doing open fire cooking or dealing with fire in any form. So always safety first, always have a lot of fun. Now you'll see me look down from time to time because, like I told you before, I'm old and I forget things, and so I need my notes. But we want to always have a good time, and we never want to get hurt ourselves or anyone else wants to be injured doing the open fire cooking. So we are near a road, so you just heard a vehicle go by. Sorry about that. A little dirt road. You wouldn't think that would have come down our little dirt road, but anyway, it did. So anyway, also you need to remember, never leave a fire unattended, because the wind can pick up and scatter ashes, and you can have problems in the woods nearby. And so never ever leave your fire unattended. When you're done, you need to just put it out. I know that goes against everything my husband wants to do. He wants to let it burn to the bitter end. But really and truly, putting it out, if you're going to leave it, is the best thing. Never leave it unattended. You don't want it to get out of hand. So, first of all, we need to talk about, now so let's think about it this way. Now, some of you are going to say, I know how to build a fire. I've been building fires for X number of years, and I know how to build a fire. But there are people who will watch this video who really don't have a lot of experience in building a fire. And so we're going to today talk about fire and how to build a fire and what types of wood you need and that type of thing. And so the first thing you're going to need is tinder. And tinder would be something really small, like these twigs, say something that's smaller than my little finger or your little finger. So so these are just little twigs that you can get off of dead limbs that fall out of the trees, okay? You can also use as tinder pine straw or dead grass or things like that. We have an abundance of oak trees here, and so we use things like the dead oak limbs and pull the little pieces of the limb off. Now, the other thing you can use as tinder to start a fire is what we use regularly, and that is what is called fat lightard or fat pine. Depends on where you are, and if you could smell it, it smells very strong. You can see the color of it, and it's very strong. The darker it gets, the drier it is. And so this is fairly wet. It's not too dry. We heat with wood in our house, and so we have this is what we start our fires with. We may have sometimes smaller pieces of wood, but basically this is what we start our fires with. If you have that in your area, it is a great thing to have. All right, so that's tinder. So the next thing is kindling, and it would be about the size of your little finger or bigger. These little sticks are an example of that. And you're going to just have your pile it on like that. I would have my fat lightard up under here, okay, so that when I light this, it's just going to poof right up and start a fire. And so You don't need so many of the tender, the smaller pieces, but you need more than what I have here showing you of the kindling. You need to get a fairly decent fire going. Now we brought a pieces of wood out of our woodshed that this would go in our heater, and actually I would have probably cut this in half to stack on top of that before I went to a piece this big. But anyway, so this would be your kindling. The bigger pieces would be your kindling, and then you want your fuel. This is just to get it all started. So then you want your actual fuel. That's what this is. This is your fuel. Now this is oak, and for the very best cooking fires to cook on the open fire, I know that sometimes people use pine, but oak has the hottest, best coals. Pine tends to want to burn up too fast and doesn't leave as good a coals. Now your mileage may vary on that, but that is our experience, and we've done this for a whole lot of years. So we use oak. Any hardwood would do though, but like I say, we have an abundance of oak here, so that's what we use. But any hardwood would do. And so then you would put this on your fire, and it would burn, and it'll burn bright for a little while, and then it'll start to make the coals. You'll continue to add more wood to it, but it's the coals that you want to cook with. You're not cooking with a flame. When you're cooking on the open fire, for the most part, you're not going to cook with a flame. You're going to cook with coals. That's what you want. And the oak or any of the hardwoods makes the very best and the hottest coals. Okay, so no need for a roaring fire, in other words. So now, I know that there's a lot of how-to books about Dutch ovens that gives you all kind of instructions and everything about using charcoal. Now, charcoal is fine in a pinch if you are someplace that you don't have ready accessibility to wood. I don't know where that would be, but if that was the case, then you could use charcoal. But what if there came a time that you couldn't replace the charcoal? Well, then what will you do? Most of us live where there is an abundance of wood. And even if the only wood you had was pine, pine would be better than nothing. And so charcoal, like I say, in all of the books is what they use, and they tell you how many briquettes to put for what heat and where to put it and all of that. And to me, there's a way to tell it with this as well, and later in the series we'll get into that. Well, that's not for today. Today we're just basically talking about the fire that you're going to use. But again, if you want to use charcoal, that's up to you. But firewood is free where I am, and where most people are. You can get firewood. You can get enough wood to cook on the open fire, for the most part free. Even if you go out into the woods and get wood, dead wood, fallen wood. So charcoal is expensive. Wood is free for the most part, unless you just live someplace where there are no trees. So, and if you live in the desert, I feel sorry for you. I lived there for a long time too, for about 1.5 years, and it was 1.5 years too much. So anyway, wood's free, and that's what we like to use. So now let's talk about, once you get the fire started, what is going to be your worst enemy when you have a fire going. Your worst enemy is going to be wind. Now you might think that, oh, you know, it's really cold outside today and I'm going to have a hard time with the fire. No, cold is not your enemy when it comes to cooking with an open fire. Now, you may have some issues with it depending on how very cold it is. But wind is your worst enemy in cooking on an open fire, because what it does is it affects the fire itself. It makes it burn up too fast and not create the coals you want. It also cools your pots, especially if you're cooking in a Dutch oven, and it cools all that off way too fast. And so wind is your enemy when you're cooking. Now, we've got a little bit of a wind here today. It's not too bad. If I wanted to light a fire, I may have to fight it a little bit to get it started, but once it was started, the wind here is not too bad right now. It's just a breeze and it feels good because it's hot. But on really windy days, and we've had to do this before, we have gotten hay bales and just stacked them up like a wall just like you were stacking bricks or blocks around, away from the fire so they don't catch fire, but so that it helps protect it from the wind. If you have old pieces of metal or tin, you can prop them up. If you do it far enough away, you can, and the wind is coming pretty strong, you can even set up a tarp to block it. We've done that before. So depending on what you have on hand is what you can use to block the wind, because that's going to be your worst enemy. And so if you're going camping or you're going out and you want to try all of this, just remember that. Be aware that you might have to protect your fire from the wind. Okay. You can even use also a metal drum if you didn't have anything else and you had a metal drum and you could cut it in half. You could even do something like that. So today we just had our first one's just a very short little thing so that you understand about fire and about what you need for fire and what kind of wood you need for fire. Our next one is going to be about tools and equipment. And then our third one will be actually cooking, and we will tell you how sorry we are that you aren't here to help us eat it. But we're going to do actual cooking then, and then the fourth in the series is going to be cleaning and seasoning. And we may talk about cleaning or seasoning in the equipment a little bit, the initial seasoning, and then in the end we'll talk about cleaning and reseasoning. So that's what we're doing today, and that's what we're going to be doing for about the next month. On Monday, every Monday, we will have a video up, one step further in our series on open fire cooking with cast iron. I hope you have a great day. Hope you enjoyed our video. Please like, subscribe, and share. Check us out on Pinterest, Facebook, and Instagram. God bless you. Have a great day from Pemberley Farm.